Hello everyone, H. Jane Harrington here with Calamity Stampede. I'm an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up. Today I'm going to show you a really fun technique that you're going to use a lot. This technique is called a resist. So for all you seasoned stampers out there, you know what I'm talking about. And if you're new to paper crafting, I'm going to show you how to do this. You see this white plant image here. This was embossed to create the resist. I'm going to show you how to do that. Embossing is very versatile. You're going to love it. You're going to use it all the time once you know how to do it. For this card, we're going to feature the Time for Tea photopolymer stamp set. And I've got a coordinating Big Shot framelit die set called Spot of Tea. You don't have to have this for this project, but it does make it easier and it creates some really great elements for it. But the Time for Tea is the set that I'm featuring. If you don't have a Big Shot, you might want to get it because you will be using it all the time. It saves a lot of time. Now on this card, you will notice that I used February's Paper Pumpkin stamp set. And it is a wonderful set. If you're interested in Paper Pumpkin, go to paperpumpkin.com and check into their monthly subscription box. I believe you will adore it. If you need a demonstrator, you can use me. I'm H. Jane Harrington in Pinson, Alabama. Okay, let's dive right in. I'm going to show you what your supply list is going to be. So first of all, as I said, Time for Tea, and optionally, the Big Shot with the Spot of Tea framelit dies. You're also going to need a piece of Whisper White cardstock that is folded in the standard card size. You're going to need a piece of Whisper White, and I used a Coastal Cabana backing. So again, you can measure those to fit whatever size you like. I layered them like so. I'm not going to give you those measurements because I didn't actually measure them, and I figured you can probably do that. So I went ahead and cut out ahead of time the teacup from the set, and I colored it in Calypso Coral. So you'll need to cut out this piece and color it in whatever way you like. I used a blender pen, and I just colored it right from my Calypso Coral stamp pad. So you'll need that piece. You don't have to have this backing, but it makes it beautiful. I cut this out with the framelit die, and I cut it out in Coastal Cabana. You will need a piece of Whisper White as well that's going to be the same length as your Whisper White backing that goes on there. Can you see that? So you'll need to cut that out because that is going to be what we are going to emboss on. As far as other utensils and tools, grab your Coastal Cabana ink pad and your Calypso Coral ink pad. You'll need 2 foam Brayers. You'll need maybe a memento pad in order just to stamp your image there. You'll need your Calypso Coral and Coastal Cabana markers. You'll need some Stampin' Dimensionals and some snail adhesive. And grab a dauber if you have one. If not, you don't really need it. I'm just going to show you a cute little technique with that. The other things for the embossing, you're going to need your clear Stampin' Emboss powder. Now mine is really, really big. They don't sell them in this size anymore, but you can grab the small one that you have. You'll either need your Versamark or white craft ink. And I'm going to use this Embossing Buddy just to help me emboss. You don't have to have those, it just keeps the static electricity off. So the 2 stamps we're going to be using are these. As you can see, mine need to be cleaned. They're a little bit pink because I use them so much. So grab some acrylic blocks with those 2 stamps on them. Okay, and I'm using, as you notice, I'm protecting my work surface. I'm using the grid paper and the paper pierce, Stampin' Pierce mat. That's what I'm using. Okay, let's dive right in. So the first thing I mentioned, I'm going to show you a quick little technique. This is not necessary, but I like it. I'm opening up my Coastal Cabana ink pad. And I'm going to get my little dauber here, and I'm just going to daub a little bit of ink on the dauber. And just like the Stampin' Sponge, I'm going to go around the edges and daub some color on the edges, like so. Can you see how that's getting some color on there? And you can be subtle if you want it to be subtle, or you can go a little bit bolder. It's just whatever you like. Sometimes things happen by accident. Sometimes we don't mean to be bold and we end up, but you like the look anyway, so just go with it and see what looks good. Okay, so I've gone around the entire image. You see there? This is a rather subtle look, but I like it. So you can put your dauber aside. That is not a necessary thing, but you see when you put it on there, it just creates a little bit more texture, a little bit more of a wow. So I'm putting those aside for now. Okay, what we're going to do is the first thing, the fun part. We're going to emboss. So I'm going to get my Stampin' Pierce mat out to give me a better image. And remember this stamp? I'm going to take that stamp. I'm going to use the Versamark today. So Versamark is a watermark ink pad, but you can emboss with it. Because it's not water-based, it sits on top of your paper. Whoops, and I just bopped my thing. Okay, so I'm going to load the Versamark onto my stamp. And I'm going to randomly stamp my pattern. Now, if you notice, it's hard to see it, but in the light, you can kind of see. So I'm going all over, just like so. Can you see that there? I'm just going to create my own pattern randomly all over. And, oh, I didn't end up using my embossing buddy, I forgot, but that's okay. The embossing buddy really just takes away the excess static electricity. Why don't we go this way with it? Whoops, it's stuck. Okay, how is that? Now I see there are a few little areas on the edge here. I'm just going to ink up the very edge of my stamp and go in, just go off the paper a little bit. You see there, just to make it so it doesn't look like I'm keeping it all to the center. You always want to remember to go off of your paper a little bit, because then it looks more natural that way. Can you see? Okay, I've got my Versamark on. So I'm going to set my Versamark pad aside, and I just cleaned my stamp real quickly, and I put that aside as well because we're done with that. Okay, now comes the fun part. So I'm going to grab just a piece of scratch paper here, and I'm going to stick this up underneath it. Now, this might get a little bit messy. That's okay, because we just clean it up, and I'll show you a good way to do that. So we're going to take our clear embossing powder, and I'm going to sprinkle it on all over the image. And what's going to happen is this powder is going to stick to the Versamark that we just stamped down. Okay, so I'm going to dump that back in. Now can you see there? It's still a powder form, but you can see where I stamped because the powder is sitting on top of the Versamark. Now, the next thing is I've got this excess powder here. I don't want to waste it. So I'm just going to kind of tip it, tilt it like a funnel. There we go. The last thing is there's a little bit that got spilled on my paper, so I'm going to do the same thing. Just going to create a little funnel and go back in with it. Okay, there we go. Now if you notice, sometimes you get little bits in here. Just pick those out. You don't want them to affect your later projects. Okay, we're done with the powder. The next thing we're going to need is, whoops, our heat tool. And I forgot to mention the heat tool to you in the supply list, but for embossing, you will need a heat tool. You can see I actually messed up the edges there, but I think it'll be okay, and if it's not, I'll show you a way we can kind of fix that. So the heat tool right here, I'm going to turn it on to the highest setting, number 2, because that's what's going to melt this powder for us. So here I go, I'm turning it on, and this is going to heat up, and you will see it's going to melt. It takes a few minutes. There it goes. You see, it's like magic. This is the best part of embossing. Okay, I think it's all done. I'm just going to give it a once more over. There we go. I turn my embossing tool off. It gets very hot, so be careful not to burn yourself. Okay, so can you see there? Now we are completely embossed, and if you feel it, it is raised on the surface. It's not absorbed into the ink. And I did make a little mistake right down there. It's hard to see it though. I don't think it's that important, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. Alright, so the next step of our resist, I mean, we could leave it that way. Some people would completely prefer to leave it that way. If you're making a wedding card, this would be a really pretty way to leave it. But we are going to use our ink pads as a resist. So grab your Calypso Coral ink pad and your Coastal Cabana ink pad. Now, to load the brayer, let me set it aside. To load the brayer, what we do is we're just going to run our brayer down like so. Okay, that loads the ink on. Now on one side, we're going to go starting off the paper. We're going to start running it back and forth all the way across. Start out darker and then press a little bit lighter as you go, and this is going to create a gradient. And you can see the images are popping up because this is creating our resist for us. See? So I'm going to go about 3/4 of the way, but very light at the one end and much darker and heavier at this other end. I'm going to go back and forth a few times over that end. You see? Alright, next we're going to do the Coastal Cabana. We're going to flip it around and do this side. So again, I'm loading the Coastal Cabana ink onto the foam brayer. Going across dark, getting lighter as we go, overlapping a little bit, and there we go. And so there we just brayered on our ink and created our resist with the embossing. Isn't that beautiful? So now, when we come over here to our card, there we have a beautiful background, okay? The last thing I want to do, though, is I need to stamp an image down in this bottom corner. So on this card, I used that one. For this one, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to show you how neat it is. We're going to take this, but I only want to use the top part. So how do you do that? Well, we're going to take our markers. These are our Stampin' Write markers, and we want the brush side. So with the with the Calypso Coral, I am going to only color in with the brush side this part that I want. So I'm going to color this part in with the Calypso Coral, and I'm going to color the top in with the Coastal Cabana. See, and by coloring it in, we're still getting the ink right where we want it to go. There's another way you can do this too. You can use the masking technique to color different parts of your stamps. But we'll talk about that technique another day. Okay, so let me grab my pad again. And if these ever dry out in the process of coloring on your stamp, just like on them a little bit, just to get the moisture of your breath. Okay, I'm going to stamp it right about here. Press it down. There we go. And now I've got my stamped image. Setting that aside. Okay, so I need my snail adhesive. And I'm going to, whoops, I dropped it again. Quickly, I keep bumping my camera. I'm going to quickly put some snail adhesive down on the back of this. Nope, I thought I ran out. There we go. Just the angle that I'm holding. I'm trying not to bump the camera. All right, here we go. Quickly putting this down because this is what's going to adhere this part of the card to this one. Okay, I press it down and now it is adhered. And now I take this beautiful resist banner that we did. And, oh, I keep bumping. I need to find a better setup for my camera, don't I? All right, and so why don't we go, I'm going to put right about in here and just press that down. And the final thing we need to do is adhere this. And so I think I'm going to adhere the teacup onto the little banner, and then I'm going to use my dimensionals on the back of the banner to pop this off the card, and it's going to look beautiful. I'm going to use 3 to make sure it's a stable base. So I just peel the backs off of the dimensionals like so, and now voila! Isn't that a beautiful little card? So it's the same concept as this one. I just used a different stamp set. And now you notice too, I used some embellishments there, but you don't have to if you don't want to. And if you don't like this, you could use a different one, or you could use a circle, or you can use even a different image, you know, whatever you like. So just make it your own. And so there, that is how you do a resist. I can't wait to see you in the next video. But if you have any questions or comments about this idea, about the technique, about any of the products you saw, then give me a buzz in the comments or email me at tumbleweedcrossing@gmail.com, tumbleweedcrossing@gmail.com. And you can also find me on Facebook and on stampinup.com. I have a blog over there. So give me a buzz if you have any questions or comments. And if you'd like to order these products, you can choose me as your demonstrator if you don't already have one. Again, I'm H. Jane Harrington, Pinson, Alabama. And thanks for joining us at Calamity Stampede. I'll see you next time.